to start the show anyway, and hopefully chat is going to catch up, and then we'll have some fun. So obviously, guys, you've just been checking out the race with Method and Vodka, and Method has come out on top. Huge bro fist to them, and a huge salute with a beer for those guys there. That was fantastic play. Vodka did obviously have the much higher DPS, which was pretty incredible to see. Vodka had the much higher DPS. Oh, I can just see another error pop up there, saying Twitch is having difficulty. That's new. Never seen an error saying Twitch was having difficulty whatsoever. So, Vodka came out second by 3 seconds. That is ridiculous. 3 seconds was the only difference those guys had. Now, the reason that came up is Vodka should have won that race. Let's be face facts. Vodka should have won. They had the much higher DPS. What it actually came down to, execution. Things that we've talked about in the past is it's not just about your DPS, it's how you play the fights. That is what's also super, super important, is how you play the fights. And what we saw is that a simple error, or not an error, but a difference in strategy on Madness of Deathwing actually resulted in a loss. And that was only because they placed their corrupted parasites away from the tentacles, so they couldn't abuse cleave. They couldn't get arm DPS at the same time as getting their corrupted parasite DPS. And that cost them 4 or 5 seconds per round. If they hadn't done that and abused some cleave and got all the melee DPS in range of the arm at the same time, we would have definitely liked to have seen them come out on top. But they didn't, and Method does take that victory. So huge congratulations to them. That was really, really impressive. I really wish my chat would load. That would be fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and be a brave soldier and refresh this, and hopefully that's going to come out on top. Everything's working fine here, guys. It really is. Besides Twitch. Twitch website isn't working on my phone or on there. And what can we do? So tonight is Storytime with Preach. This is in place of the usual web show. Usually we'd have a web show with me and Ghosty. Ghosty is away in the Dominican Republic. Yes! I can see you! Hello! I can see you guys! I can see chat. Oh, I can see clearly now. The rain has gone. Fuck yeah! I'm so happy. Yo, my guys. Oh, Twitch, don't you fail me now, Twitch. I swear to God. Chat loaded. Everybody's happy. We've got hollers and brofist coming left and right. I don't feel like I'm talking to nobody, which is what I felt like originally. I felt like I was just talking to myself, which is crazy, isn't it? We're sat here talking to ourselves. So, oh, I will sing every day. I will sing every goddamn day. I love a bit of sing-song, baby. I absolutely love it. Woo! So I've got some ballers with me. Fantastic. Nice to see you guys on a Saturday night. And I hope you really enjoyed that race as well. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I had a really great time. I'm so glad to see you guys now. Big bro fist out to you all for sticking with us. We did have 180 people waiting. 60 of those guys have gone west side. But what can you say? You know, that's how it's going to roll. That's how it's going to roll. So, here we are. And it's story time with Preach. We've got Ghost off in the Dominican Republic, just near Jamaica. Boom! He's around here somewhere. And he's having a great time. He's gone to a wedding over in Dominican Republic. He's going to be back next week. So next week is a really live web show. Getting back into the show for today is also another announcement is tomorrow there will be another Preach workshop. Ever since we did the last one last week, I've had a lot of guys sending me videos in and all that kind of stuff. So I can actually start doing regular workshops, which is what I wanted to see. If you guys can send me gameplay of yourselves, hopefully Emma, Brofist from Holland, a big shout out to my lovely fiance. She's up in Holland at the moment, and she's actually going to visit some friends of mine who are Dutch and get a brofist with them. So I'm really happy to see that as well. So I'm thinking about her. She's a bit worried because she's on her own. She hasn't got the big Preach to protect her, but she's out there and hopefully she's going to have a really good time in Holland. So you Dutchies out there, have a little care when you see a little red-headed lady walking around, because that could be my Emma. So that's just awesome. Yeah, look at the chat coming back. You fucking ballers. Yeah, man, this is so much fun. So tomorrow night, 8 PM GMT, I might switch to Own 3D. I really might. What I'm actually going to do is do some live streaming tomorrow, probably, of me just playing, just to see how the live stream copes overall. I'm really unhappy with having to do this all the time. Is these constant crashes. It just ruins it for you guys. I absolutely hate it. I wanted to talk to you about various things, and we should have started, 55 minutes ago. But here we are. We have got started, and that's what's most important. So tonight it's Storytime with Preach. Tomorrow you've got another workshop. We're going to be looking at a Fire Mage and a Protection Warrior tomorrow. I might only have time for one, but we'll see. We'll try and fit both in, see if we can have a longer stream. While the girl is away, of course, I'm sad to see her go. We're going to have a nerd weekend. It's nerd weekend over at Preach Towers, and we're going to have some big fun. And I'm going to do the workshop again tomorrow. Next week is the live web show with Ghosty back. We're going to talk all about that. And maybe tomorrow I'll have some more information about what happened in the internal side of the Method and Vodka race. Maybe I could talk to you about that, about any thoughts and feedback from those guys. That'd be really cool. So tonight, we're actually going to do a story time with Preach. We've done this once before, when I told you about how I got into World of Warcraft and how I met Ghosty. And you guys really, really enjoyed that. So when I have time to live stream like this, I will sit down and do it. As you can see, when Emma's away and I'm not doing all the sort of fiance type stuff, you know, when I'm not being the big Care Bear, is I will have time to live stream with you guys and sit down and have a beer and just generally be a complete nerd for the weekend, because we want to be a nerd for the weekend, don't we, guys? So yeah, workshop tomorrow is going to be Prot Warrior and a bit of Fire Mage, a Prot Warrior player and a Fire Mage player. One of the good things is the Prot Warrior player is actually going to look at something totally different from how you're playing your class and how the class actually involves itself in the whole raid. So look forward to that one. I think it's something pretty cool. So, what are we going to talk about tonight? We're actually going to talk about the darker side of World of Warcraft, some bad things I've done, and as I've grown and reflected and looked back upon them, I can actually see for definite that those are really horrible things to do. It's not like when you think you've done something bad, and then like in a couple of years, you think, well, that wasn't actually that bad. No, the more I think about it, I was an absolute arsehole. And the reason we're going to do this is because, yes, I might have grown out of doing that, and I can look back and think, oh, Preach, you suck, you massive jerk. But what we can do is, you guys who may be new to the game, or in mid-level guilds and all that kind of stuff, maybe this stuff is actually happening to you. And these are some warning signs and stuff for you to look for. So we're going to be talking about how I broke up 2 guilds, how I made a guildmaster cry, and how I, at some points, did actually physically cause issues towards my friends. We're going to talk about all those things today, and hopefully you're going to find it pretty interesting. But I think you're going to find it interesting because this is the stuff that goes on in World of Warcraft. And you can also take aspects of this into the real world, where I certainly have developed a certain internal character, a character who's separate from myself, that I only use now when necessary. Sort of a nastier side that I can pull out when needed, and usually that's often in business. And that has developed from World of Warcraft. This is a character that I have generally developed inside myself. It even has a name, would you believe? And if our brother's in the chat, which I believe he is, the name of this character is Russell Emerald. Now, there's a small story of where that name comes from. Obviously, my name is Mike Lamb. But there's a character called Russ Emerald. Now, when I was 13 years old, my brother, who was very into IT, and he runs a ton of IT things, took me to a computer exhibition. Being a total nerd, I was like, yes, I want to go to a computer exhibition. I was only 17 or something at the time. So he said, in order to come along, we need to get you a name badge and stuff. So I immediately thought of this ridiculous name called Russell Emerald that I wanted to be. I wanted to be Russell Emerald, okay? So we're going to this big computer convention, and I'm going on about Russell Emerald. Russell Emerald, in my character, was a smooth-talking businessman who got the job done, right? This is I'm 17 years old, and believe me when I say, when I was 17 years old, I was a fucking moron. Like, big time. I mean, always out to get the laugh. I was the big, fat, ugly kid, you know, and total nerd, sort of overly intelligent for my age, I guess, and just big into being a complete arse of myself, because I wasn't going to pull any girls. What the hell? I was no chance going to pull a fucking girl. I was into my Mega Drive. It was like, oh, some girl comes up to me, and I'm like, whatever, I've just got a cool spot on the Mega Drive, and I'm really fucking cool at it, so I'm going to chill and play this. So, you know, that's what I was like. But I was tend to be the big, loud one, which obviously helps now with what I'm doing when I'm broadcasting to you guys. I tend to be the big, loud, complete idiot. So on the way to this exhibition, I developed the character of Russell Emerald. At age 17, I walked around this convention on my own. I left my brother to it. My brother goes off. He does all his actual business stuff. He was there legitimately to get stuff for his college that he was running at the time on the IT side. So I go around and I pretend to be Russell Emerald. And Russell Emerald is the kind of guy who walks up to various suppliers, like I think Microsoft were there. There was a lot of people like Fluke. You guys might know these. They create data testers. Hewlett-Packard were there. These big names in the IT industry. And at 17 years old, I was walking up to their sales guys and I was making deals left and right. Deals I couldn't possibly have ever imagined doing in the real world. I was 17, for Christ's sake. I wasn't even working for an IT company. And I'm going up and I'm talking to them about their testers, about the latest printers. And I signed up. I signed up my brother's college for endless amounts of sales stuff. And for 2 years after that event, I only went once, 2 years after that event, his college was still receiving mail for Russell Emerald. It was absolutely insane. And he hated me for it because all this mail would arrive addressed to Russell Emerald for his department, you know, Russell Emerald IT department and all that kind of stuff. And he kept coming, all that kind of shit. It was really good stuff. Anyway, in business, I then translated that into my nastier side, which I developed from World of Warcraft. And sometimes when my business calls me when people don't pay, be it my customers or one of our other customers, when they don't pay, I'm the one they send in to sort of have a word. And I put on this character of Russell Emerald. So I tend to be a complete arse with people. In fact, I had to do it this week with TGN. If any of you guys follow my Facebook, which is Preach Gaming, Preach Space Gaming on Facebook, you'll saw the message that while we were trying to release ourselves, the YouTube channel from TGN, is TGN then let me know they hadn't even bothered to start the process. And it takes at least a month. It's like resigning from a job. You have to give 30 days notice. Well, in YouTube's case with TGN, it's 20 days notice. So I did that. They said, okay, it's going to be 20 days. No big deal, preacher. Everything's A-okay. Everything's done, sorted. 16 days later, I send a message. Can you just check that everything's okay with how it's going? The reply, which was left for me on Skype and then the guy disconnected, so I couldn't reply, was, hey Mike, which is my real name, obviously. Just to let you know, TGN haven't even bothered to put you on the list. Let alone do anything like that. They haven't even put you on the list to release you from your contract. So it could possibly be another month. And then just disconnected and just left me with the news. He did say, I'm sorry, it's nothing to do with me, I'm just the bearer of bad news. In walks Russell Emerald to stomp some skulls. I was so pissed off, literally, the Russell Emerald came out of me. So I said, right, I took 5 minutes, I was angry, I was like, okay, I need to get Russell Emerald on this. Copies everybody in. The big email, the big stingy dirty email. I spoke to our new partners and said, what do you think about this? They were like, oh, well, we can do, you could do this and that, but you have to wait until they release you until we can do anything. I was like, oh, man. So I thought, I'm not having this. No way. In steps Russ Emerald. Russ Emerald types the big email. The next day, I was unpartnered. That's how Russell Emerald rolls. I send the big scary email the next day. Not 20 days, nothing like that. The next day, I was released from my contract. I was like super serious. I'm not going to tell you what I put in the email, but it was enough that I got an email back within a few hours to say, don't worry about it. We've unpartnered you. We put you on the super mega priority list. Please don't send us any more emails. You are gone. And I was like, cool, awesome. That's exactly how Russell Emerald rolls. So this alter ego Russell Emerald, although it started in real life, translated into WoW. So, as I'm going to go through the story, first of all, of how I broke up a guild, it's important to lay down some facts in that when I did this, I was almost a different person than what I am now. And like I say, when I need to be a complete and horrible person, I do it when it's necessary. Whereas back then, you're talking about a teenager, probably 18, 19, bordering on 20, but also the time when I actually became sexually attracted to girls. Now, I've got to remember, as the big fat nerd growing up, girls were nothing to me, nowhere near. But while I was at university, I lost a hell of a lot of weight, and I also started working in a nightclub, and eventually became the manager of that nightclub. At the same time that I was just getting into World of Warcraft. So I found this overbearing confidence, and my ego went kaboom, you know, I've got this giant head. I thought I was the absolute balls. I had girls coming on to me, and this was like brand new to me as the mega nerd, you know. I was no longer interested in Cool Spot, and I was very aware of not telling them about World of Warcraft and all that kind of stuff. So literally, girls started to become attracted to me, and it was just bizarre. I mean, good looking girls too. It was just really weird time for me in my life. And then I eventually met Emma just during that period when girls were sort of attracted to me. So it was a brand new experience, and my ego just exploded and just became this like moron really. And this translated very heavily into the game. So picture a guy who's around teenager, you know, big ego and all this kind of stuff, and then found my niche. I've been a decent gamer ever since I could play games. Literally, ever since I could pick up a game, I'd always been pretty good. Naturally pretty good, pretty quickly as well. I could pick up a game that I'd never played before and sort of understand it. Understand how the game works, how the mechanics work, that kind of stuff, and just translate it very quickly in my mind into all sorts of games. I used to do this all the time. So World of Warcraft was one of those games because it's got in-depth lots of mechanics. A lot of things that some people really struggle with is understanding like the intricate mechanics of how the games work. For me, it was just like, okay, I understand how that game works, and therefore I became pretty good at it. So in vanilla, when I first got World of Warcraft, I go ahead and I roll a Dwarf Warrior, okay? So I'm a Dwarf Warrior, I get to level 60 with my brother. I was in my brother's guild, he showed me the ropes, he got World of Warcraft just before me, and he said, come and join me on my server. It was Alakir, EU, and join our guild. And I didn't get anywhere because there was a ton of warriors. I got to level 60 and there was warriors all over the guild. They had like 13 or 14 warriors. Remember, this is 40-man raid days. So I had loads of warriors. And there was no place for me whatsoever, especially because I was slightly newer than the rest of the guys. I didn't have a place there, so I actually stopped World of Warcraft pretty quickly after that. There was nothing to do on my own at level 60. Finding something like a dungeon run, which would have been, you know, UBRS, things like that, could take a couple, maybe even 3 hours to find a fully decent group. So I gave up on WoW until my friends decided they wanted to play as well. On a new server, we would roll Horde. We were going to go Horde. So I wanted to be a warrior again. Of course I wanted to be a warrior. Warrior's own, right? Am I right? You know I'm right. You know warriors for the win. But they rolled 3 warriors, a mage and a warlock. That team doesn't work in some 5-mans. And we were all planning to level together and all that kind of stuff. So being a goon, being the guy who thinks, oh, that's not going to work, I go ahead and roll a priest, a troll priest. And I only rolled a troll, and I hated the look of my troll. I couldn't stand it, because they were all orcs. The mage didn't actually go undead until he re-rolled later on. He started as a troll as well, so we could all be together. He later deleted the character and re-rolled mage. I wanted to be undead, because undead looks badass, right? I'm an undead caster. They look really cool. So I was like, okay, well, I'll be a troll then, so we can start in the same place. You've got to remember, in vanilla, getting from the undead starting area to the troll starting area was really, really hard. Like, stupidly hard. So, I go ahead and be a troll priest. Hated it. I was disgusted with what my character looked like. I thought it looked awful, really bad. And I still do. I don't play troll casters. I know some guys like it. Some guys do. That's cool. I don't like orc casters. But some guys love orc casters. I like male undead casters, where if I spoke to another guy like Genji, he'd be like, oh, you need to be a female caster, that kind of thing. It was just my personal preference. So I leveled this thing pretty quick. Not super quick, pretty quick. I had played through the game before, so I had a general idea of how it worked. Now, you've got this guy with this big super ego who happens to end up playing one of the most underrepresented and most important raid classes in vanilla at the time, the Holy Priest. I was a healing priest. Now this is a dangerous combination. This is a very, very dangerous combination, is having a guy with a huge ego playing a class that guilds need. It's a really, really dangerous combination. And this is where it started to explode for me. Not only that, but I actually thought to myself, now this is hilarious because I was a clicker and all that kind of stuff at the time. My very first video is me clicking like a complete scrub. Just running around BGs, just clicking shields and all that kind of stuff. But I healed extremely well in a 40-man raid. In a 40-man raid, there could be a ton of people making mistakes, so if you had a general idea of what the hell you were doing, you could do really well. So our first major story takes place in a guild called the Berserkers, on a guild called Balnazar. Now I'm going to be telling you about some people you've never heard of, so you try and relate that to people that you know. The Berserkers, we were ungilded at the time. We were just a bunch of friends leveling up together. As most people starting World of Warcraft, you tend to start with some friends, somebody you know. And I came across the Berserkers in a UBRS run. They essentially needed a healer really, really badly. And being a priest, I obviously was instantly picked up. If you were a priest at level 60, you just instantly got into any raid you wanted. There was no waiting time for a priest, as compared to my warrior, which would be 2 or 3 hours. So I'm like, you know, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like God's gift at the moment to World of Warcraft. I'm a priest, I'm pretty good at it. I'm a healing priest, which was extremely rare. Nobody wanted to heal back in the day. And guilds were actively like, wow, this guy generally knows what he's doing. So I get dragged along to this UBRS run with this guild called the Berserkers, who were led by a lot of Serbians. Now, nothing against Serbians. As you find out playing World of Warcraft, it doesn't matter where people are in the world. Everybody has some good guys, everybody has some bad guys. That's one of the things you'll find in World of Warcraft, is it doesn't matter where in the hell in the world those guys play from. Generally, there's some good personalities and some bad personalities. So this guild is led by a guy called Adonai. Adonai is just this rogue. Just a rogue, Serbian rogue, and his main tank is his best friend, and they all play from a net cafe, such as you'll find a lot of Greeks do the same thing. The Greeks tend to play together in a net cafe, and the Serbians were doing the same thing. They would play all together in one net cafe, and they were filling up the guild with anybody they could find. So I roll in on my Holy Priest and do a pretty good job healing UBRS. I was only in blues and stuff at the time, really bad gear. Decent blues though, which was almost like epics at the time. So I did pretty good, and they said, can you join our guild? Now, me being Mr. Ego, you realise that guilds want you, and you have some power to make things happen. So I did this. I said, yes, if you can invite my friends as well, which were the 3 warriors, the mage and the warlock. And they said to me, we don't need those classes. I said, well, you don't get me. You either take me and these guys, or you don't get me at all. And this is a horrible thing to do, and it happens quite a lot. And I, in fact, did this a few times. I saw it at the time as me protecting my friends and looking after my friends. Now, that shows the ego. Because I'm like, guys, I got this, you know. I'm cool. I'm the big holy priest and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to sort you guys out. Because you guys need me to get anywhere in World of Warcraft. And that is legitimately how I thought about it in my head. Even though these guys were friends of probably about 3 or 4 years at the time when MMOs really started getting popular. We all played another MMO beforehand. And these players were equally as good as I was. I was really bad at the game at the time. I could heal really well, but I was still like a clicker and all that kind of stuff. So I was thinking to myself, ugh, I'm the big it, you know. I'll get you guys in the guild, just leave it to preach it. And I did, it worked, which then bolsters your ego even more, okay? So in comes a second really bad combination. If you think you're better than everybody else in the guild, you're going to cause trouble for yourself, and it can never end well, okay? If you think you are legitimately better than everybody else in the raid, you're going to end up having a problem. It's either going to explode, or it's going to collapse and you're going to have to move on, or you're going to make a lot of angry people and get kicked. What makes this situation worse is the group of Serbians were quite an unstable group in themselves. The main tank is a guy called Redex. His brother is a resto druid called Poison. Resto druids were also ridiculously rare during vanilla, at least on our server. And having a good main tank was also really rare. In vanilla, your tank was the most important class out of the whole raid. Every single loot that guy wanted, he got. Without question. He got it. He'd just say, I want it, he would get it. So then he wouldn't log for raids. He wouldn't log for Molten Core because he had all his loot. He was a very loot conscious person. And would only log for raids, to the point where the second guildmaster, a guy called Lovac. Lovac is a really intelligent guy. I want you to bear this in mind. A really intelligent, round about 30-year-old, really sort of laid back but grounded person, and really sort of let the guild grow on its own and led from behind. And he sacrificed himself a lot to make sure the guild progressed. We were a progression guild. And by that I mean Lovac was a hunter. But hunters weren't that great during vanilla. They weren't. They were generally considered auto shooters, and anybody who could cast aim shot in between auto shooters was considered to be the best of the best hunters in the world. Lovac could do that. He was a fabulous player. Lovac is a fabulous, fantastic player. This Serbian called Lovac. Eventually, Adonai needed to take a break, and Lovac became the official full-on guildmaster. During this time, I was better than the priests they had, which weren't many. But I was better than them, so I got promoted to officer. Now I've got aspirations, huge aspirations, that I want to be clearing Blackwing Lair. I then want to go and smash AQ40. These raids weren't actually out yet, but I've got aspirations to be the best of the best of the best, because I felt I was the best. And if I was the best, then I should be in the best guild. And I could turn this guild around. I didn't agree with how the guild was being run. So we had people like Lovac, who would never play as hunter. He would log the character Redex, the main tank, to tank for us. If we needed an extra healer, he would log it. His hunter barely got any loot through most of tier 1. And he was genuine. Looking back, I know now, he was sacrificing his playtime for the good of the guild. I resented the hell out of that. I said, let's kick Red X. I'm an officer now, so I could talk in officer chat. And I was a big, egotistical guy. I'm also playing the best priest in the guild. You can't afford to lose me, was my attitude. And this is the most important part, guys. If you believe you are so good, you cannot be afford to lose. They cannot risk losing you. You gain so much power that it runs to your head. And especially with the rest of the Serbians being... You've got Lovak, who's dealing with the stress of operating a guild that isn't too interested in progression. They didn't share the same motives for raiding. They wanted their loot. So we had a guild that would mainly turn up on Molten Core Day, clear Molten Core. Blackwing Lair, nobody would show up. We'd have 20 or 30 people. And it used to drive me insane because I'm this big guy. I'm carrying all these healers. What the hell is going on? And believe me, I wasn't. There were some guys who were equally as good as me, but I didn't believe it whatsoever. So, we get to this impasse where Lovak is swapping characters, and we were working on Onyxia at the time. Onyxia was a very tough boss when it first came out, and we're working on Onyxia. He's playing different characters. I feel like I'm almost solo healing the raid. I feel like I'm actually doing that, which is ridiculous, right? It's just a stupid thing to say. Yeah, of course I'm not solo healing the raid, but it felt like I was solo healing the raid. So I'm in the middle of this raid, and the guild is kind of like, well, Blackwing Lairs tomorrow, they're just not going to show. Remember, forums were kind of not rare, but not really used, especially by all 40 members. So organising schedules between DKP, between 40 people, you had a guy dedicated to that. His entire job, essentially, was to upload DKP for 3 or 4 hours after the raid. Crazy stuff went on in vanilla. And I'm in this position where I want to be smashing Blackwing Lair. Blackwing Lair is out. Guilds are clearing it. Why aren't we? And Lovak is of the same opinion. This is why it gets quite hard for me to talk about a little bit. Is Lovak is of the same opinion, and he's dedicating much, much more than I was. But he wasn't a hard person. This is what's important. He wasn't a hard person. He was actually quite laid back and a little bit weak. He wouldn't kick the character Red X or his brother Poison. Now I should point out that yes, Resto Druids were very rare, and the first boss, Razorgore in Blackwing Lair, needed a few druids. There was only Resto Druids. There was no Ferals, there was no Moonkins. Those specs were not viable at all. So we needed Resto Druids because they sleep the drakes that run around during the fight. And of course it's easy clearable now. You can 2-man it or 1-man it, whatever you want to do. But back then you needed all 40 people playing really well to not only CC a lot of the ads, but control the DPS and so on and so forth. So we needed these guys in the raid. But they would only log when they felt like it. So I was of the opinion, kick the bastards! Kick them out of the guild! They're fucking useless. They're not showing up. I'm turning up. I'm Preach. I am the Lord Almighty of priests. Get the fuck out. You know, let's just kick them. Let's find somebody else. And he was like, no, these are my friends. These guys sit next to me in the cafe. Okay? These guys are like next to me. They just don't want to log on right now. And I'm like, who fucking cares? I'm Preach, the priest. Do you not realise what I'm doing for this guild just by being here? This is my attitude, and it's generally true. And you'll find people who believe this right now in World of Warcraft. I am fucking Preach. You guys should worship the ground I walk on. They're not turning up is a personal insult to myself. This, you know, this is ridiculous. Like, you think back at it, and I was thinking about it all today, is how to present this story to you guys. And I remember thinking to myself that I legitimately, when people didn't log who were important to the raid, that I was like, how dare they? How dare you not log after the effort I'm putting into healing this raid? And it was insane, and that is exactly what it was like. So eventually, Lovak started to show signs of weakness. And I thought to myself during the day, in between raids, that I had an opportunity to take over the guild. And you know, it's so horrible when you say it, but I saw an opportunity that he'd started to weaken. He was getting very stressed out about the whole Red X poison situation, which was a big deal at the time in the guild, because these guys were getting very special favoritism for being friends of the little Serbian clique. And I was very much aware of this problem occurring. That I could see that the Guildmaster was starting to weaken and show signs of weakness, and wanted a couple of days off. This is very key. He wanted a couple of days off while we were working on Onyxia and Razorgore. So I said, I will raid lead. Now, this is where I'll tell you now that I'm probably one of the most horrifically brutal raid leaders that I've ever met in terms of raging. I raged, previous past tense, raged a lot when things weren't going well. And it was purely because I couldn't understand why these guys couldn't do what I was telling them. I could not understand why a resto druid could not sleep a dragon. How can you not do that? Do you not realise what I am doing? How can you not do that? I didn't understand it. This is where your majorly elitist attitude comes from. Everything's going really well for me in terms of real life and turning and in-game as well. Besides the fact that we're just not progressing as fast as I believe I should be. So I'm in these raids and the guys were saying, I can't do it. The hunters couldn't kite the dragons. How can you not do that? Let me play your class. And this is where you started seeing lines like, if I could log everybody's account right now, we would kill this boss. And I believe I said that at one point over Ventrilo to 39 other people. If I could just log all your accounts right now, we could kill this boss instantly. And they're generally weaker people, and you'll find weaker people. I was a raid dictator. I don't do it anymore because it brings out quite an ugly side of me. And I raged quite hard. If I've got a picture to show you in a moment, I'll explain. So during these 2 raid leading sessions, we downed Razorgore. When I started raid leading and started raging hard. Raging so hard at the guild, we actually killed Razorgore. And then Lovak came back, and he was like, wow, you killed Razorgore. And we've been wiping on Razorgore for weeks. Razorgore was a tough boss. Very hard. Something you won't really find these days in one of the new dungeons is the entry-level boss was incredibly hard, and Razorgore was tough. Vilestraz that came after was even harder. That was insane, but we'll get to that shortly. So we downed Razorgore on my second ever leading of a raid. And Lovak unwittingly has to say, maybe you should raid lead. The guys who were also determined for progression, who tend to be more vocal, suggested Preachy should raid lead. And I loved it. I loved raging at people. I thought it was brilliant. I mean, literally, I thought it was fantastic because they were listening to me. I was telling them to do things and they were doing it. And if they couldn't do it, I was calling them out on it left and right. Why the fuck can't you do that? All you do is click a dragon. You press hibernate. That's it. What can't you do about that? And then you can sit there and watch this dragon for the end of time. And the people who also wanted to progress, who've been turning up day after day, liked it because we killed the boss. If you show results, they like it, no matter how the method is done. It doesn't matter if you got there by dragging people through the mud if you got the result, and we got the kill, which they've been working on for weeks, so I got that. So Lovak, while he was having these days off, says maybe you should raid lead and take some stress off his shoulders. Now, being a complete egotistical git, I now saw the opportunity where I could actually become the guild master and usurp him. That's what it's called, it's usurping him and replace him. And I put certain things into action to make that happen. When he would log off, I would talk in depth to the officers about our strategy. And therefore they saw me as the new, unofficial leader of the guild. Because I was putting strategies and stuff into place purposely when he was offline. I was doing this a lot, really a lot. And it's horrible to do. I mean, you've got to remember, this is, well, fucking 8 years ago now. And that's exactly how I played it, is I would wait and work out exactly when he wasn't going to be on, but the officers would be, and then talk to them. And the officers were relatively weak guys. They were a lot of the Serbians who had been used to Lovak's lead or somebody else leaving them. So one thing to note for guys, and how this translates into your situation, is be very careful of a guild master or a big officer who is driven in a way that is different to your guild, but the guys around him who always also make decisions aren't particularly interested in the roles. Also be careful of any guild master that promotes an officer who doesn't really want to be an officer. If you see a guild master say, no, you're going to be the officer, and the guy's like, well, I don't really want to do it, be very careful of that. Because essentially he's put someone in the place who will talk to the guys. That's it. They will talk to the guys. And they just take the crap off the raid leader who's after his own motives. It will just, that's all it will do. It will just take the attitude, it will just divert the attention of the players to this officer. And then maybe the officer one day will say, hey, you know, some of the guys are a little bit angry about this. Believe me, I've been in this situation. The guildmaster won't even listen to it. He wouldn't give a shit. He wouldn't care whatsoever because I didn't. And you've got to remember, a lot of things that we think that only happen to us happen to everybody. And people think the same way. So I didn't give a shit, and there'll be people out there in your guild who don't give a shit either about what you say because they believe they are correct. And I believed utmost that I was correct about all the decisions I was making. So a month later, Lovak rages at me in the officer chat. Okay? He absolutely goes mental at me. He logs on, and somebody has told him, hey, Preach is saying a lot of things that we should do this and this with the guild. Maybe we should make this change. Maybe we should do this and that. And then Lovak eventually logs on and confronts me about it. Because Lovak was a good 30 years old and quite an intelligent guy. He drags me in officer chat. He explodes. What the hell? It was only me and him online. And I remember it quite vividly. He was like, what the fuck have you been doing to my guild? You're acting like you run the guild. And this was my opportunity. And some people would actually go, Christ, yeah, I've been a complete arse. Not me, because I'd actually planned this beforehand. And I knew this was going to happen. As I said to him, I essentially am running the guild. What the hell have you done for this guild? I said that to a guy who played every other character that guild needed in the raid to make sure we did a raid. If our main tank didn't log, we wouldn't have a raid. There was no backup back then. We didn't have 2 geared main tanks. We had 1. And that was standard of all 40-man guilds. If your main tank left, this even happened in early TBC as we made that transition to 25-man. Your main tank was so important that if he didn't log, you were in real trouble because there wasn't extra loot to throw around to other tanks really unless you recruited somebody. And there was no such thing as cross-realm recruitment. So if you got a new geared tank, he was the main tank of somebody else on your server. And this was the situation. So I was like a complete ruthless git. He said, you're basically taking my guild off me. And I went, what have you done for this guild? And that hurt him. And I knew it was going to hurt him as well. It hurt him quite badly. And he essentially just quit the guild there and then. Boom. My job was done. He promoted me to guildmaster, left the guild and disappeared. And I was so happy. I really was. I was genuinely happy at the time that I'd gotten my own way. He raged so hard. And I feel so bad about it now. I really do. I can't even explain to you. That guy put so much effort into that guild, and it was his friend's guild that I had just tagged along to. It was. Yeah, it's awful, man. It was really bad. I feel so bad about it now. If I could ever meet him in game again, I'd love to have a chat with him. But yeah, I literally... He opened up a wound in front of me, and I just stuck a knife right in it and twisted the blade. He exposed himself for just that one time. The rest of the time, he played it quite cool, and then he finally snapped and he raged, and I saw the opportunity, and I dove at it like a motherfucker. I was in there. And I got the guild. I was guild master of the Berserkers. Now, I'm going to show you this picture now. Because my computer's over there, I'm going to have to switch this picture to you. Now, now this is where this interesting situation is if the motives of the guild don't match the motives of the guy in charge, and the guys underneath him, which are your officers, don't really want to make any sort of waves. It was a big moment in the guild. You've got to remember, it's a 40-man guild, so we probably have 50 or 60 members active all the time. You rarely see that in a guild these days. So we've got this entire large community, 50 or 60 people, and the guild masters just quit the guild. It was massive. This makes huge waves in a big guild. In fact, a lot of the times in the big top-end world guilds, a moment like this is like across the internet. It's like a big moment. A guy from Death and Taxes has left. What the hell? You guys knew about it. It was big news. Because guilds couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't transfer to another server. You couldn't do that. So when a guy left of importance, it was huge. Especially for the guild. It really felt a hitting blow. And I was happy about it. I really was. So this guild, we were stuck on Veilstraz. And now this is where it gets really sad. Why am I telling you this story? Oh my god, why am I telling you this story? But again, this is the whole point of tonight is that you guys can recognise if these things are happening to you because I've been there, I've done them. I'm now the guild master, and my aspirations are to clear Blackwing Lair as soon as possible. The aspirations of 35 out of the 40 raiders or 45 raiders are just to clear Molten Core and have a great time. It was started by a group of friends, these Serbian friends, and they'd all sort of branched out into other friends that they'd met through the game. And all they wanted to do is just chill out in Molten Core. Yeah, we'll have a couple of bashes at Blackwing Lair a week. But other than that, not really. In walks Preach, who is essentially unchallenged in any decision I made. I was completely unchallenged. I could do whatever hell I wanted. And all I wanted was to smash through Blackwing Lair. Now, at the point where I took over the guild and forced out the guild master, I knew this guild wasn't capable of clearing Blackwing Lair. So I essentially took over a guild I didn't want to be in anymore. This is how bad it was. Oh my god. This is how bad this situation is. So I took over this guild, and I didn't want to be it anymore because the guild couldn't achieve what it wanted to do. So we had this constant overrunning situation where I would put the guild together, I would assign the officers roles so that nobody could talk to me. If you were a lowly member, you didn't talk to me directly. If you were a hunter member, you talked to your hunter officer, and he may or may not pass that message to me, and I may or may not give a fuck about it. I just want you guys to show up to do what I want you to do. That was all I cared about. And this type of guild leadership is everywhere, guys. This was 7 years ago, but I guarantee this is everywhere, and you guys might have experienced it yourself. So, I couldn't care less about the wants and needs of the guilds. And there were still my friends in there. Let's not get this wrong. The friends I played with for years. Genji wasn't there because Genji was playing in America at the time. He was going for his Field Marshal title. But players like X-Men, Zaraki, Fetamine, and Phoenix. You won't know those guys, but I played with those guys for 4 or 5 years before this point. Consistently. And they were members of my guild. Even at that time, I thought I was so much better than them that it didn't matter. I would prioritise their invites over other people. I'm sure you guys have felt like, why is this guy constantly getting placed over me? Is it because he's friends? Probably is. Or he's a better player. As a motivated and determined guild master, you bring the better players, even over the top of your friends. And that's another story we're going to get to shortly. So, I'm now in charge of a guild I don't want to be in, but I'm now in charge, which is what I wanted. I got my goal. I'd taken over the guild. And the guys wouldn't turn up for Blackwing Lair because my leadership was really harsh and rage-worthy. So they would turn up for Molten Core and then not log in for Blackwing Lair. At least the Serbians wouldn't. You know, the friends of Lovac, because he was obviously really hurt by what I'd done, he wouldn't log in. So they would, like, as a protest to me, log in. In walks Preach's idea is I will literally trick them. I will trick all 39 members of this guild. This is what I did. Every time Molten Core was scheduled, I would put the raid together, have the 40 people in the raid, and then say, go to Blackwing Lair. And they would go, what? And I would say, go to Blackwing Lair, or you're gone from the guild. And I've got evidence. Wait, I'm going to have to go. Oh no! The picture's disappeared. Bear with me. Bear with me, guys. Okay. Now, sorry about that, but can you see this picture? Look at the raid headline above it. That is my, you can see in the top left, that is my troll priest. Preach, as you can see. I've managed to get 39 members of the guild together. And this is me forcing them to go to Blackwing Lair against their will. It's so horrific. And I literally, that's what I did. That kind of stuff, guys. You can see exactly what it was like to be under my raid leadership. I knew we were going to wipe. I knew that it was going to cause us huge problems as a guild. And those are all members who believed they were going to go to Molten Core. And that is exactly how I treated them. So you can make a second guess being raid led by me is I was obviously a complete and total tool. So, sorry, the PC's over there, so switching frames is actually pretty difficult for me. So I apologise for that. So yeah, that's what I did. I tricked them into going to Blackwing Lair. I did that on many, many occasions, by the way. And if they didn't come, if they left the raid, some people did this. They would hear Blackwing Lair and they go, fuck that. Just see. Chat froze. I thought you guys didn't even see that picture. Yeah, exactly. This is crazy. This is why I want you to know about it. And this is how it changed my attitude towards the game. This is all stuff I went through to go from there, which is vanilla. That's years ago. That's vanilla raiding with me, to where I am now. And which is producing content to actively help people. I don't think I will ever make amends for how I was back then to some people. If you can imagine me saying that to 39 people, imagine what I was like individually when you pissed me off. Can you imagine? And I'll give you an example of the guy who cried. What a douche. What a massive douche. Really douche. And it's not something I can look on with happiness. It's not. It's really not. Lessons learned. So I hope you guys are taking from this what I'm trying to get across to you. This isn't me bragging. This is horrible stuff. And this is true to life of what happened. So getting along with the story, I'm now in charge of a guild who, as you can see by that picture, didn't want to do what I wanted to do. I was hungry for progression. Very hungry and completely unchallenged in what I did. And it was so hard to get in a 40-man raiding guild back then. There might only be 1 or 2 on the server. If you're on a really heavy PvE server, maybe 3, possibly 4, but bound to be all sorts of different levels of progression. Remember, it wasn't like today where when the new content comes out, your gear is automatically brought up to the level of the previous content so you can go into the new content. If you weren't geared from Molten Core, you couldn't go to Blackwing Lair. If you weren't geared from Blackwing Lair, you couldn't get into AQ40. And if you weren't geared from AQ40, you couldn't get into Nax Ramus. So if you started in Vanilla and got to level 16, you had to start in a Molten Core guild, who might still be wiping in Molten Core. Because, of course, what we had back then is the Blackwing Lair guilds would steal the Molten Core guys who were gilded when their guys left. Because people still left the guilds like we have today. So poaching was very, very commonplace. So you'd have all the Blackwing Lair guilds stealing your geared members of the Molten Core guild, and then you'd have to recruit more and start again. So you actually had a lot of guilds who were determined to clear the content themselves, who would realistically just feed the higher guilds, feed them up. And that's exactly how it went up. So, I'm now in charge of this guild, and they couldn't kill Valstraz. The Berserkers, the guild at the time, could not kill Valstraz. At the same time, I lost 2 players who were my key, 2 of the really good players in the guild, who I actually went to Amsterdam and met. I had a great time there. In fact, I've got a picture somewhere of that, but I'll leave that for now. I went to Amsterdam and I met them and we had beers and stuff. They went to one of the Nax Ramus guilds. They left our guild, and that really left me in the shit because I could only rely on maybe 6 or 7 players. This is why the raids were changed by Blizzard. Essentially, Molten Core content, even at Vanilla, could realistically be killed if half your raid died. You could still kill it, especially in Molten Core. You could still realistically kill it. Maybe not Ragnaros, but the other bosses you could afford a ton of deaths and still get away with it because the bosses were really easy. Anybody who says Vanilla was hard is a liar, really. I mean, it was hard for bad players because we didn't understand the mechanics overall. We didn't even understand how to gear properly. We had paladins wearing leather. You had druids in cloth and all sorts of stuff, and just DPSing with random crap that we could find in dungeons. Really bad stuff. Nobody knew things about advanced rotations and things like that. It just wasn't heard of. So with about 20 out of 40 people alive, you could kill the boss. So they couldn't kill Valstraz, and I'd only been in charge for 2 weeks of the guild when I left. I straight up just left. I left the guild, and I didn't care otherwise, because I took with me my friends, which were the warriors and the warlock. The mage had left the game by then. He was bored of raiding. And I straight up left. I was in charge for 2 weeks before I left that guild. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, I knew that guild would fall apart the second I left. Because I had destroyed the morale of the original guys who'd been there. I had systematically crushed the morale of the Serbians. Everybody was so following me that they started to believe in their own minds that without me it wouldn't work. And as you work through World of Warcraft, you'll find that the higher the guild gets, the less important you are, even as a raid leader. It's so, let's give an example, is in Method last week, we've got a legendary rogue, really top DPS as 0-4, and he left the guild. Now back in vanilla times, losing what is considered to be maybe your top DPS rogue at the time is really painful for the guild, really, really crushing and painful. But at a guild like Method, they've seen hundreds of people come and go over the years, and the guild has realised and grown to the level where one person doesn't make a difference, and you've got to realise that, which is a humbling experience. But back in vanilla, especially in the mid-card guilds, or maybe even now, you guys can tell me better, in the mid-card guilds and in the early progression guilds, a really good player is very, very key. So key, it's like the glue that binds the guild together, these really good players. So I knew that not only had I taken the guild over and got rid of its leadership, But I had officers in place who weren't able to run a guild, and that's what I wanted. I wanted people who would just sort of talk to the members whenever they felt like it. And I left them, and the guild fell apart within a week after. Everybody just left. Preacher's gone, and I knew it was going to happen. It was absolutely insane. I knew it was going to happen, and I felt bad at the time. No, I didn't. I didn't feel bad. I knew it was going to happen. And there was almost an egotistical boost that this guild can't live on without me. And me leaving proved that point, because the guild did fall apart. And I was like, in the back of my mind, I would never say it, of course. Right, sly git. I would never say it, but I was like, that guild's going to fall apart without me. Happily say that the guild had been around since the beginning of vanilla, would fall apart. And I know you guys are all like, Breach, what are you saying? This is nothing like what you like now, which I hope you're thinking. I'm not like that now. But, you know, these are all lessons you guys should take in mind. And they're also a good story. They are a good story, but, you know, from a different time and a different person. And, yeah, so I left that guild, and I took my friends with me. And we joined a guild that was just about clearing AQ40, and then onto Naxxramas, and we did all that stuff. And that was the end of vanilla. So the next part of our evil saga comes with the new expansion, because this is going to happen to you guys, which is why it fits in nicely with the launch of Mist of Pandaria. Because there are guilds out there who are going to be doing this, and there will be guild leaders out there who will also be planning this. So I'm going to take 2 minutes, guys, and get my voice back. You guys could talk to Ghosty.